You're listening to Casting Class, an engineer's guide to manufacturing aluminum castings, hosted by Batesville Products. For over 75 years, Batesville Products has been engineering, casting, machining, inspecting, and polishing aluminum castings for over 70 industries nationwide. In today's episode, we'll continue to share our experience and industry secrets. Casting Class is in session. Today we have Rachel Weber and Johnathan Johnson joining us. They're regional sales consultants for Batesville Products here.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. I don't think it's just a unique thing in the foundry industry. I know we were at a trade show last week talking to a bunch of different manufacturers, and I think just manufacturing in general, seeing a lot of increases in robotics. The workforce is ever changing, and I think looking at suppliers and what's the best way to make your product. I think it's always a good time to relook at all that stuff.
Yep.
There's a lot of things to take in consideration because not every process is going to be a fit for what your end product's going to be. And I think it's a good point. We do have a lot more detailed, slides and other things on our website. But just what are we looking for in a casting versus a fabrication? What is the quantities needed? What casting method is going to fit your part depending on the complexity of it?
Yeah, and any good foundry, if they know a part is not going to be good for their process, they will tell you instead of trying to make it work. So having the right wall thickness, quantity, size, all of that matters. And if the foundry knows what they're doing and knows their process well, they'll be able to tell you that, and they'll also be able to recommend a different process, even if it's a different casting process to explore.
Yeah, and I think that's where we consider ourselves to be experts, right? We don't always have the answer for, being able to control that in-house or being able to produce your part in-house, but at least we can take your product, take a look at it, get it to our engineering team if, Rachel or I can't make that decision, and see what process would fit you better, or are you doing it correctly now and maybe casting's not for you. So I think that, bringing that information to us and letting us, help you guys along the way it's a great process. So
yeah, definitely.
Do you have experience in our industry, right? And Batesville Products, we've been around 76 years, and I feel like we have a pretty good grasp on the permanent mold industry and also other things, because we do look at a ton of castings that end up being a die casting or a sand casting, or we're going to push them in the right direction, and we do a lot of learning as well. So I think that really helps to be able to point the guys in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think another great way to kind of look at the question too is, does that caster, that supplier, do they manufacture parts for similar product that you're looking to make? And do they have examples that they can show you? If you went to their foundry, would you be able to walk around and see something that you do that they're already making? Not necessarily the same design, but the way you would cast it would look similar. So they have a lot of experience already kind of making the product that you're going towards or the direction you need it for.
And just what your end product is going to. So you're gonna have different regulations depending on what industry you're going into, and just having the knowledge of, hey, if it's in the food industry, what do we have to do? If we're going into, something more along lighting, or it just doesn't really medical, there's all different kinds of regulations and different testing that needs to go into that. So just having that knowledge is
that's
great.
huge. Yeah, that kind of actually plays into what you were saying. A lot of times with, if you're medical or food, you need to cast primary material because it needs to be pure. So if you recycle it, there could be potential for there to be other materials in it. So if a foundry is using recycled material versus primary, that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, and what controls are in place and how often do they do the testing, certifications and other things for the metals. Those are all important questions to ask as well.
Oh, yeah. And then also how you control porosity, inclusion, and defects. I know there's a lot of new technology coming out. I know we're personally testing out some degassers. So again, kind of going back to that automation question, is your foundry using new equipment in the industry to try to better their process and to see what it is they can do to make up the parts even better?
if you're working in an industry, Johnathan, I think you mentioned both medical, you mentioned food equipment, a lot of those industries that require certain level of casting expectations. If you're using secondary or primary metal, that's going to have a huge impact. So all of this stuff needs to be solved out beforehand and really understood beforehand, so that when you're setting up your process, you're pouring the casting to expectations. We're in 74 different industries this year, and some of those industries really care about porosity and inclusions. Some are hidden, behind the scenes, and they have definite issue areas or concern areas, but overall may not have inclusion or porosity issues in certain areas. So you can design that to be casted out. But if you're using secondary metal, you can see more of that just from a basis standpoint, and it's important, right? So if you're looking at medical or food equipment, or you're looking at something that bears weight, it's definitely important to understand what type of metal and what industry expectations are.
Moving on to the fourth slide, what secondaries do you handle?
Is there anything more painful? I mean, that's what I just keep thinking of. Previous role I had, it's been, 7-8 years ago, but I was in the purchasing side. And if you're having to just buy a casting, and then you get it in, and then you got to send it out to get machined, and then you get it back in, and then you got to send it out to get heat treated, and then you get it back in, then you got to send it out to get coated and back in and back and forth and polish and all that. I mean, is there anything more painful? Again, from my previous role, it seems like a nightmare. Does the shop really maintain not only the casting side of things, but the polishing RMS that is required of the product to have a good coated finish, to have really good tight machining tolerances? If you handle that all in house, and you have the processes and the programs in place in house, that saves so much time and money for purchasing departments that have to get that in and send it back out, and get it in and send it back out. And not even including all the shipping costs in your time and effort to be able to do that.
All right, how do you ensure quality standards are met? A big portion of it is, one, understanding what the quality standard is for the customer, and making sure it's all called out on their prints, and making sure that we can know that up front, so we can be clear on what is capable within the process. So it's very big for the foundry to understand what process is needed for the part specifically, so they can have the proper gas levels in the pots, and making sure that they develop their process so that they hit the right specs they need at the end of the day. And there's a lot of different ways to also help bring the quality up to standard. For example, we do a lot of liquid penetrant or pressure testing to make sure that you're following it when the quality standards that are needed.
Yeah, and as far as first articles and PPAPs, each product's going to have different requirements, and you mentioned this, Tim, like the specifications and what you need to meet and what's required, and how many times you need each part tested off the line, right? I mean, there's certain people that want the first and the last. There's people that want almost everything inspected as you go, because their requirements on that print and that product are so much tighter that they are allowing that allowance isn't there.
Definitely, if you need a lot of testing, that is a big question to ask your supplier, if they have the resources or contacts in the industry to help them with that testing, whether they do it in-house or have partners that can help them do it, especially when it comes to food and medical. It's a big deal.
Yeah, and what processes are in place too? If they're ISO certified, they have a specific process for catching anything that might be an issue, right? So if it is, you are having a casting issue, you're having a defect, there's things in process to where you can follow that through your system to make sure you can fix the problem, right? Yeah, and catching these things early too, right? If you've got the right inspection procedures in place, you're catching these earlier before they're going down the line. And it's huge, right? Our department does a great job of inspecting the castings, letting us know if there is an issue, and then if it is, how are we going to fix that? What processes are in place to go through either recasting or retesting to make sure we're hitting those specifications as well.
And I think you hit on a good point there, Rachel and Johnathan, early on. Make it known. Again, what's important to you, what's important to your end customers, make it known expectations, because there's permanent mold standard industries, there's casting standard industry standards, there's die casting, sand casting standards. For the most part, that provides usually what you're looking for. But if there's stuff that's important, tight tolerance threaded areas, or does the form, fit, and function need to be tighter? Those definitely are needed from a print perspective, so we can understand what you guys are looking for. If you're going to a different vendor, what expectations they would have to try and make sure that they're getting the quality product that you're looking for.
Yeah. So again, just kind of reiterating what we went through today is make sure that the supplier you're looking for has the materials that you actually need to cast, and what is the quality control that they have in place? How are they actually integrating automation into their process? And are they trying to push themselves to be with the industry or even ahead of the industry? I think those are some of the key things to really look out for, especially on a foundry side.
Yeah, and along those same lines, with quality controls and modern, well-maintained equipment. I mean, we love to have people out visiting our foundry.
Yeah.
We'd love to show off what we've done. We have a really great facility. It's a very clean facility, and it has a lot of other things that you really like to see the process. And I think a lot of people, understand casting, but you don't understand the whole process of the casting. So I think it's neat to be out and be able to visit, a supplier and kind of see how they work and see them in person is, really, really beneficial.
Yeah, I agree.
So Johnathan or Rachel, if I'm coming to you as a potential supplier, potential customer looking for a casting, what types of information should I bring to you? Just high level.
Let's start.
Yeah. Timing. When do you need the product by? What the application generally is going towards. If you have any type of print or model, that's a big deal, obviously. So we know what we're looking at and what we're going to be getting into. If you have any quantities that you plan to be casting for, that's a big deal in the casting industry, because quantities definitely drive the process for a lot of casters. So if you're looking for high volume, lightweight parts, like we'll tell you right away, look at die casting. So definitely quantity, and also the size of the part too, because sometimes even if you have a high quantity part, it might be too big for the die casting process. So it's just things to consider like that, as well as if you're open to design suggestions as well, is a big one.
Yeah, I think any kind of secondaries, I know the print's going to call that out, but what else can we do to help you finish the product to be able to, go ahead and manufacture your next step? That's kind of key. You did mention EAU, the amount you need per year, whatever, but I noticed sometimes too, maybe it's calling out a specific process regardless of that too. So that kind of makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But, from basic stuff, that would probably cover a lot of that, Tim.
You're listening to Casting Class, an engineer's guide to manufacturing aluminum castings, hosted by Batesville Products. Be on the lookout for our next casting class on the first Wednesday of every month. Until then, you can find more resources like videos, written guides, and case studies on our website, batesvilleproducts.com. That's batesvilleproducts.com. See you next month.